Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we got another fantasy file on the way. This time looking at Antonio Gibson, the Washington football team's lead RB. Now, here's the thing, people. If you weren't super into the draft process last season, maybe you don't know. Antonio Gibson has not exactly been usually we get our running backs drafted in the top 3 rounds. We expect them to pretty quickly get a 3-down role. You were a running back drafted that high. Why would you not? But for Gibson, despite him being 6 feet, 228 pounds, sub 4.40, swagger for days. Like, you see every single thing since he's been selected, 6'6" overall, screams running back, except when you go back to Memphis and you see that he only had 33 career rush attempts, 44 career receptions. The guy was playing more of a wide receiver running back hybrid role. I don't know what they're putting in the water at Memphis, but similar to what we saw Tony Pollard getting. Obviously, they've also produced Darrell Henderson, and we had those other backs coming out this year. So Gibson, was really one of the first, or just, I guess, the most successful guy in that role in Memphis, because 11.2 yards per carry, that's freaking insane. Was just putting monster numbers up in terms of just yards created and, being able to break tackles at a high rate. Antonio Gibson did everything that we wanted to see him do as a running back, but 33 rush attempts is the smallest of small sample size. That is completely insane, and it would have made sense if it took him really his entire rookie year to kind of learn the nuances of playing running back. As much as we like it to be this replaceable position, and you go on Madden, you can just put anyone in there and put up pretty big numbers. Obviously, it does take a lot to be an NFL caliber running back, know how to read your blocks, do all those little things that us sitting on our couches and looking at spreadsheets maybe don't put enough stock into. But that didn't really come to fruition. We were thinking, okay, Antonio Gibson, after they got rid of Adrian Peterson before the year, the situation was we should get this 3rd-round rookie, because look at their depth chart, and worst case, he's going to have the pass down role, because why would the guy that played more wide receiver than running back not have the pass down role in this offense? As Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friends. After week 1, Peyton Barber pretty much gets relegated to the bench after he had a typical Peyton Barber game, and Gibson becomes their lead early down back in week 2. Dream scenario. All we need now is for him to get these targets that we know he can handle. Oh man, J.D. McKissic, position high, 106 targets last year. Oh my gosh, I could not think of a more annoying person to get 106 targets at the running back position than J.D. freaking McKissic. Nothing against the guy, and I guess, it's kind of like the Ricky Bobby all due respect thing. It's hard for me to trash the guy and then say, nothing against him. I don't have anything personally against any of these players. We hate ADPs. We don't hate players, everybody. I've said that before. But with Gibson, the only thing standing in between us getting Gibson top 5 NFL production, seriously playing every single snap, was J.D. McKissic, and it just didn't make any sense why he was being featured like this. It's almost like the Bears and the whole Andy Dalton situation. I'm fine giving incumbent players the benefit of the doubt. They've been in the system more often, but J.D. McKissic was the comfort guy for this offense, and they acted like he was this long-term veteran. He played with the Seahawks from 2016 and 2018, and he played with the Lions in 2019. This wasn't even a guy that was familiar with Scott Turner's scheme. He wasn't, some guy that Ron Rivera had coached before. It made no sense, the amount of comfort that Washington consistently had for J.D. McKissic, who isn't bad, but when you're feeding a guy the most targets in the league at his position, you would like him to be more than not bad. And it was just one kind of underwhelming performance after another, and it just got even worse once Alex Smith was out there. And again, I don't know why, and we've even heard Ron Rivera and the coaches say afterwards that they were scared to put Alex Smith out there. I never understood why. If you're so scared to put the guy out there, and you needed J.D. McKissic to be out there, you needed a freaking 5th-year borderline journeyman wide receiver convert. He's the guy that makes you feel better about playing Alex Smith out there on one leg. Just never made sense to me. The pass blocking numbers do paint McKissic out better, but even then, people, we're not looking at a huge difference. I do think blocking grades in general, our PFF, people do a great job grinding every single play and doing their best with that, but it does tend to be a little bit of a fickle stat, and I'm not necessarily going to go out on a limb and say, just because a guy ranks 5 spots higher than someone else in, our PFF run blocking, pass blocking grade, that they're definitively a better, pass blocker. In McKissic's case, yeah, he graded out way better than Antonio Gibson, but really, Gibson has a good 30 pounds on McKissic. McKissic, also in 2 or 3 inches. Like, I just refuse to believe that pint-sized J.D. McKissic as a pure pass blocker is, worlds ahead of Antonio Gibson. Now, was he better at just kind of meshing with Alex Smith, knowing when to stand and block, knowing when to, get away from the blitzer and go catch the pass? Very possible. And Gibson, as polished as he might have been better as he might have been as a receiver than a running back coming out of college, it does make sense that, just getting those fine-tuning kind of that part of his game, now playing as a running back would be difficult. But we just didn't see any numbers that really told us McKissic is the guy that should be getting that level of additional targets. That's the issue. McKissic, 106 targets. Gibson, 43. Like 63 more targets than the guy. That's my problem with this. It's not that McKissic shouldn't get the ball. I understand today's NFL, you need more than one running back, but to have that sort of disparity between these guys when McKissic averaged 0.5 more yards per reception, only 0.12 more yards per route run, but I think this is just due to Gibson having a lower target depth. I mean, McKissic was being used a little bit more down the field. Because of that, Gibson actually averaged an additional 2.2 yards after the catch per reception, and he caught a higher percentage of his catchable targets. So, I'm willing to give McKissic the slight lean in terms of who do you want out there on passing downs, but 63 extra targets lean, that's where I draw the line. And people, it could still be an issue in 2021. That's the only thing stopping Gibson from legit being a top 5, top 6 fantasy back. And I was just on Underdog Fantasy with my guy Josh Norris, and he was talking to Washington reporter JP Finley, and basically they're all saying, get McKissic at the end of these drafts. Yeah, if he gets 100 targets again next year, you are going to want McKissic at the end of your drafts. I do think a couple factors are going to change that, though. First of all, Alex Smith, the guy that, again, they needed McKissic out there for whatever reason to feel confident playing Alex Smith, he's out of the picture. Now we got Ryan Fitzpatrick, regularly one of the guys known for forcing balls downfield, not being afraid of tight windows, not being afraid to chuck that rock deep. So I think from having a higher average target depth quarterback like Fitzpatrick, that's going to hurt McKissic. And arguably more of an issue is just going to be the pieces they've added. Curtis Samuel is, pretty much their third at this point, kind of wide receiver running back hybrid. He's going to be out there. He's making way too much money not to be. Adam Humphries was a low-key signing. If someone asked you what team Adam Humphries is on before this podcast, maybe you wouldn't know. Now you do. Washington football team. He's out there. An explosive third-round rookie, Diami Brown. I mean, you use that sort of draft capital on the guy. I understand McKissic just put a fellow third-round pick on the bench for portions of last year, but I do anticipate Diami being out there in 3 wide receiver sets before too long. So basically, McKissic, he's still going to be out there as the number 2 running back, but the hope is that he's not going to be this, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type they were using him last year. And because of that, that'll give Gibson a better chance to just win out the true running back snaps. So he was really getting on his way to doing that last year, people. And again, as a pure rusher, he answered those questions. Those were the questions at the beginning of the year. Can Gibson be a great rusher? And he was 5th among 47 qualified running backs in PFF rushing grade, tied for 5th in missed tackles forced per rush, tied 15th yards per carry. He was actually number 1. This is pretty cool. Number 1 in stuff rate, which is a new stat we got. Stuff rate is basically what percentage of your runs went for no gain or a loss. Almost like just different type of success rate, but only 4.1% of Gibson's carries went for no gain or a loss. That was number 1 among all running backs. He still had 8 carries of at least 15 yards. It wasn't this situation where he was forfeiting the potential for bigger gains, like we see Saquon Barkley and some of these guys dance a lot behind the line. They get a lot of negative gains, but they do that because a lot of times they can take that thing to the house from anywhere on the field. So really, Gibson found a good kind of middle ground in that. And again, it was just surprising to see him already be this polished as a running back when that was the biggest question of his game. So hopefully with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center and with all these receivers now, we just don't see quite as much as J.D. McKissic, because last year, it really was injuries more than anything that kind of derailed Gibson. He wasn't getting the targets we wanted, but man, like that Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys, he ran for the 3 touchdowns, and he also got 7 targets, and he set season high marks in targets and snap rate at 65%. We might have been almost witnessing a similar Jonathan Taylor, like end of the season rise, Cam Akers. We see it a lot with rookie backs. I think we're about to see that with Antonio Gibson, and unfortunately, he gets injured next week against the Steelers with turf toe. He comes back playing through the pain, but not enough to really get back to getting featured workloads. They still gave him 13, 20, 20, and then the playoffs, 16 touches. So he wasn't useless or anything, but similar to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like I'm not going to use the kind of post-injury splits for assessing where he's going to be in 2021 because I think that injury was playing a really large role into it. So, credit to Gibson for putting together, these really great performances without the benefit of a high-end target share. Here's to hoping, people, that we get that high-end target share in 2021. Because if we do, we are looking at the potential for Antonio Gibson to be DC CMC. And as much as I love that nickname, I think we actually have to adjust it to DCMC. Credit to Peter Overset, one of the best followers you can find on Twitter, one of the best guys in our funky little industry here. So DCMC is the ceiling for Gibson because, again, he's already got the rushing, market share locked down. He is their lead running back. We just need him to get those targets now. And it wouldn't be shocking if we at least see that, just discrepancies shrink because Gibson having this, it was much closer. Again, if we take away kind of the targets in the slot or out wide and just look at pure running back targets, Gibson and McKissic were pretty close. So if they were just okay with giving Gibson a little more and getting that 60, 80 target range, that could be a difference between him, being kind of a borderline RB1 and actually winning people some leagues. So before we get to our exact ranking, I want to give my PFF Lily stat. And I've talked about this a little bit just recently, but JD McKissic last year, guys, 51 targets from the slot or out wide. No other running back had more than 30. I believe it was Chase Edmonds at 30. Alvin Kamara was up there. I mean, sheesh, people. That's rough. Curtis Samuel's there now. Adam Humphries is there now. Diami Brown's there now. Gibson should be getting those targets, people. I don't understand why he's not. They used him briefly in that role. I talked about their stats being close. He had that Baltimore Ravens game. They threw him the ball 5 times. He caught 4 of them for 82 yards. And if you look at kind of the plays he was making, they were lining him up outside, just throwing him short screens. And then you got freaking Antonio Gibson in space making dudes miss. So, to force feed McKissic, just these basic targets, it's not like he was running just these great routes that Gibson can't run. Just get the ball, get it out of your hands, and they were choosing to give that to McKissic. We need to project him as getting some of those, but hopefully not as many. So with all that said, Antonio Gibson comes in as my fantasy RB13 at the moment. He's in my tier. With some luck, these dudes could bounce up 2 tiers because, again, DCMC, God, that's hard to say. Might need to work on that one. Might still need to workshop that one. DCMC is his high range of outcomes. So I have him behind Cam Akers, Joe Mixon, and Jonathan Taylor. Man, I get so much hate for not having Jonathan Taylor higher, but I'm almost, leaning towards bumping Gibson ahead because, Gibson at least has that higher end. I don't know. I guess Nyheim Hines and J.D. McKissic are probably both going to be annoyingly involved either way. So I'm okay with that ranking. I'll keep Taylor ahead of Gibson, but it's a conversation. They're in that same tier. And my guy, Andrew Erickson, who's always on this pod as well, brought up a good point on Twitter, just saying Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, and Antonio Gibson, they're in the same tier as each other, and we can have conversations about that. So again, I have him RB13. I think his underdog ADP is RB14. I really wouldn't disagree with anyone that wants to rank him as high as RB10. So he has this stupid high ceiling this year, and that really is what we're targeting in fantasy. It's first or last, people. We don't get points for coming in 4th or 5th. So when it's between Gibson and guys like Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Swift, Chris Carson, I just think he might actually have the higher ceiling, even though those guys are in that same tier where they could leap up ahead. So give me Gibson ahead of those guys, again, behind Akers, behind Taylor, behind Mixon. But if you have Antonio Gibson on your fantasy football team in the year 2021, I think you were going to be A-okay. If you want to hear more about Antonio Gibson and the rest of the NFL, I invite you to check out PFF's podcast network, which covers everything NFL, college, and fantasy football. Recap the NFL draft with Mike Renner and Austin Gale's 2-for-1 Drafts podcast, or get the 2021 betting content you need with the PFF forecast. And also, people, if you want to go out there and play some best ball, go on over to Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football, if you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Best ball is a season-long game where you draft a team like you normally do, but that's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. Go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit $10 using promo code PFF and get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's promo code PFF. Draft now at Underdog Fantasy. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you as always for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I invite you to check out PFF.com if you're enjoying this series. I am converting all these podcasts to articles. Which one comes first? Well, the article. It's not a chicken or egg situation, but I'm just trying to, get extended thoughts on all these guys. We have 3 months ahead of us before the real season gets going. More than enough time if we want to grind to go through every situation. So we will continue to do that. And thank you as always for tuning in. So I'm Ian Hartitz, and until next time, take care, everybody.